All right. Go ahead, Wayne.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 series of leadership workshops. I would first like to thank Jennifer Nace for putting these programs together and inviting us all to do this as we still continue to experience these unusual times. As many of you are aware, Zoom has become the way of meeting in the last year. And it has opened up a lot of new doors to us. And this series is one of those doors. Jen is recording this as well as live streaming it. So if you were not able to join us this morning, you'll be able to get the program from Jen and share it with your members. And that'll be true of all the events, from youth, juniors, membership, lectures, all of them. So I would encourage you to take this opportunity and at any time through the year or even coming years, get this and utilize it as a program in your local Grange or even in other organizations. I would like to also welcome with us this morning, for the first time being introduced publicly in the Pennsylvania State Grange, is Miss Carrie Nace. Carrie has taken Vince Phillips' position as the Pennsylvania State Grange Legislative Director / lobbyist. Carrie is no newcomer to lobbying and working with the folks in Harrisburg. And Carrie, I'd like to say hello, and I'll give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself to our members.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Again, my name is Carrie Nace. I'm very excited to be working with all of you and the Pennsylvania State Grange. Just to give you a little background on myself, I was born in Maryland, but I was actually raised in State College. So Penn State was always very near and dear to me. My entire family were members of the Grange in the Huntington and Altoona area. I went to Juniata College, which is in Huntington, after which I took a year and spent with the British Embassy at the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office. When I got married, we moved to Adams County near Gettysburg on a beef farm, which we raised beef cattle and hay and straw. Obviously, Washington was a little too far to commute, so I started my career in the Pennsylvania State House Representatives. For just about 21 years, 10 of which I spent with the Speaker of the House, Sam Smith, then moving to a local representative as her Chief of Staff, Kate Klunk, in the Hanover area. In 2019, I joined Novak Strategic Advisors, where we have a wide variety of clients, but along with Grange, we also represent Pennsylvania professional milk managers. So no stranger to agriculture in any way, and very excited to be with you. And I think we have a little slide that we can show that we can hand out after, just as a resource to you. But I'd just like to say, I'm here for you. If you have any issues or concerns that you want to talk about, I'm here. My information is on the slide. That's my cell phone, so feel free to call me, text me, email me, and I am happy to be your resource in any way. So I'll turn it back to Wayne, and then we can go through what we've been up to.
And thank you very much, Carrie. And as you just heard, Carrie is going to be an absolutely fantastic resource for us. We actually plan on spending at least part of our day on Monday in the Capitol. That'll be the first day that the Capitol has reopened since I can't remember when. And it'll be so nice to actually get in and meet people and say hi. And if you can't shake hands or anything like that, but at least we can wave and smile and see each other in person. So, and a lot of the senators and representatives have expressed to the Grange they're anxious for us to be able to get in and visit again. I just participated on Thursday with Penn State's Capitol Day, which is a situation where we call it citizen lobbyists. Visit our senators and representatives and try and encourage them to support the Penn State Land Grant University in the state budget. And that's very important. And if you noticed, I mentioned the word there, a citizen lobbyist. And that's what each of you viewing us are citizens lobbyists, citizen advocates. And please don't underestimate your ability to make a difference in not only your community, but state and national government. If Carrie and I go and visit a legislator and we mention an idea, and you can see many of them on the screen there in front of you, and they get a phone call, an email, or a letter from people in their district that say, this is important to me, that reinforces our visit. That makes our visit all worthwhile, because it's not just Carrie and Wayne coming in and saying, hey, this is important to the Pennsylvania State Grange. It's now members of the Pennsylvania State Grange backing that up and giving it strength. So you can see there, we have, Carrie has created this slide for us today with Broadband, which has bipartisanship, food insecurity, agritourism, the agricultural budget, which I have learned more about the budget process in the last 4 years than I ever really wanted to know. It gets really frustrating that every year, it doesn't matter what party is in office, they approach it from the same avenue, and they more or less play back and forth as to, well, we're going to take this away, but we'll give it back if you do this. So it really gets frustrating at times. And so those are just some of the issues that we'll touch on today. Carrie is going to mention some of the bills. Just before we went live, we were talking about Representative Barb Glime's bill on agritourism that the State Grange and many other farm organizations like Farm Bureau, PASA, numerous other groups have supported for several years, and we just couldn't seem to get it across the finish line. Last year, almost there, and then they at the last minute tied it in with a COVID liability bill, and the governor vetoed it and refused to sign it. But he indicated that if it was on a standalone bill, he would sign it. So, Carrie, how about if we start with Representative Glime's bill, and you can maybe give us an update of where we're at.
Absolutely. So in late January, early February, the House started out strong, especially in the Agriculture Committee, in getting House Bill 101 out of committee. It was then voted on the full House, and it really had a really strong bipartisan vote on it, which makes me very encouraged for the future of it. As Wayne said, it was vetoed last session because it was folded into a broader liability bill. So we're very hopeful that this time it will be successful. It is going to be voted Tuesday, the 23rd, in Senate Agriculture Committee. I just got an email this morning when asking about it. So very excited for that. It has the chance, if it's Tuesday, the Senate's in Wednesday, it could at least get a reading, possibly Tuesday, and might get a vote yet this week. Otherwise, they are out until I think the end of April. So we'll have to wait for full passage then. But again, very hopeful that we'll get that across the finish line. Representative Glime has worked very, very hard to get that out. And then I'll just mention another bill because it was voted at the same time that the Grange supports, which is House Bill 187 by Representative Rowe, who's from Union and Snyder County. And that expands the immunity from civil liability when you're donating food that is exceeded the manufacturer's recommended date, but it's still completely fit for human consumption. This was kind of a drawback of people donating food. And as we've seen with the pandemic, we really need to get this across the finish line as well, so that we can help our food banks for people that, really have food insecurity because of the pandemic. So those are are two big ones. Wayne, do you want me to kind of go over the other ones that have seen movement so far?
Well, I was just thinking, give me just a moment to talk a little bit more about Representative Glime's bill,
Sure.
because for you and me, I forget that you and I, we know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But for the folks watching may not understand what we mean when we say agritourism and the liability associated with that. So an easy way to think of it is this came about primarily because of the struggles with the dairy industry right now. And everybody watching knows how hard it is for a dairy farmer to make a living strictly off of dairy. And so many times, I know even in my family, when I was still on the farm, we relied on our spouses for what they call off-farm income to help us make it in the dairy industry. And so what this bill is doing is enabling farmers to open up their property to do like bed and breakfast, or to have people come in, and many times even from other countries, and stay on the farm and learn about farming. Now, anyone that has ever lived on a farm or has spent time with a relative that was an active farmer knows that the minute you set foot on that property, there are inherent dangers to being on a working farm. It's one of those is if you get too close to an animal and you spook that animal or you scare that animal, you could get kicked. They could swing their head around and hit you. You might be walking from the house to the barn and there's a tree in the front yard that has a root sticking up, and you could trip over it if you're not watching where you're going. If you climb up on a fence and you lose your balance and fall off, those are inherent dangers to being on an active working farm. And so what this bill would do would prevent people from suing the farmer because they got hurt in one of these situations, which is inherent to an active farm. Now, the farmer would have to post a sign similar to what I just said, that you are entering an active farm, and with that comes in dangers that are inherent to this operation. And it does not prevent them from being sued if they exhibit negligence on that active farm. Now, what you say, well, what would be something that could represent negligence? Okay, they have a pipe that broke and they have to dig a ditch to repair the pipe, and they don't put any kind of fencing or barriers or anything up to prevent someone from walking into a hole in the middle of the yard that really blends in, and someone goes in there and falls in and gets hurt, or something like that. That's negligence. It just, common sense tells you if you have a hole that you dug to repair something, put a couple posts up, put some yellow tape around it, do something to try and warn people that there is a danger there, an unusual danger. But many of us know, I know I had more than one cow standing on top of my foot. I've been kicked multiple times. I'll never forget milking and having the old cow's wet tail come wrapping around my head, trying to swat a fly off. Those are just things of part of being on a farm. So that's kind of the scenario behind Representative Glime's bill, is to prevent people from suing for a situation that you should know when you walk onto that farm, this is something that could happen. So, Carrie, do you think that adequately describes the bill?
Yeah, you did an amazing job. Absolutely. And it's just to allow, it's just really allow farmers to be able to have some, extra income. I know we have a really good dairy in my area, Perrydale, and they can open it up and let kids see what life on a working farm is, and milk feed some of the calves, and it just really it'll help our farmers out.
And this is kind of an extenuation of the Pennsylvania Farm Show, because I know a lady that works in the building where the Pennsylvania State Grange office currently is. She has asked me if I could arrange for her and I think 2 of her daughters to go to an active dairy sometime, and that the kids could actually see what goes on. Because education, and many times when you hear me speak, I keep dwelling on education, because it's education and people understanding where their food comes from, how it's grown, the safety of it, that helps promote the Grow Local, Buy Local program, the PA Preferred program. And if more farmers can open up their farms and house a family for a couple days, that they can see that, hey, this isn't just going to the giant store and pulling a bunch of tomatoes off the shelf, or just going to the giant store and picking up a gallon of milk. This enables them to learn and understand and appreciate how that gallon of milk or those tomatoes or those onions or potatoes got to that grocery store. So this is a continuing educational process that can really be beneficial for years to come. So Carrie, you want to go back to the next bill?
Sure. Let's see here. Let me get back so I can properly tell you the bills. This past week, a House Resolution 68 by Representative Kathy Rapp was ported out of the House Health Committee. This would actually direct the PA Budget and Finance Committee, which is an organization that was set up within the General Assembly. It was made through statute many years ago, and what they do is they study costs to the Commonwealth. And so anybody can introduce a resolution asking them to conduct a study. And this one in particular would study rural dentistry and to document dental care costs for rural residents. The Grange supported this bill in the past. It looks like I'm hearing that it could get a vote this week. And of course, rural health care is something that's very important to the Grange. Another bill that passed committee in the House this week was House Bill 183, and that would that's by Mindy Fee. She's a really great representative from Lancaster, and it would allow unspent monies in the Agricultural Conservation Easement Purchase Fund, which is approximately I think 98 million, to be used to help farmers with their succession planning. And Wayne, I believe this is something that Vince really worked on in the past. As a lot of people know, succession in farming is a topic that needs some study. What are you going to do if you have family that's not necessarily wanting to continue? Well, what are we going to do? What's the farmer going to do? And this would allow to use some of that money in planning. Is there anything you want to add to that, Wayne?
Yeah. If you would you can you talk a little bit about what Secretary Redding, how the state in the last budget introduced some grants that would also help this, and when we say succession, a good way to understand, another word to use for succession would be progression into or toward the next generation. Because if you look, as many of you have heard me say, less than 2% of the American population are true farmers or producers anymore. That means less than 2% of the population of America, are feeding us. And that population is getting older. Many of those people are 57 and above. So how many more years are they or we going to be able to be active producers? So we're looking for ways to be able to transfer that active farm, which in many cases, I know I've been told right here in Perry County, the average farm is going for approximately 1.3 million. So how many of you have 1.3 million in your bank account that you could give to one of your kids and go out and say, here, go buy a farm and set yourself up in business? If you do, I'd really like to meet you, but we need to come up with a way that the farmers today can form apprenticeship programs or other avenues that we can get these active, productive farms over to the next generation. So that's why this is so important. Carrie?
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is an issue that Secretary Redding takes very seriously, and the farm organizations and community in general. I know there's some talk of could we do some kind of statewide database that would match farmers that are looking to maybe retire, they don't have family that wants to take it over, and then match them with the person looking for a farm, looking to get into this business. And Wayne just touched on something very, very important, is apprenticeships. I know, I can tell you, just to backtrack just a minute, just to give you a full picture of what people are taking this seriously, is Representative Torrin Ecker here in Adams County has had many discussions with Secretary Redding and the different farm credit organizations of how can we set up a better pipeline, and maybe using community colleges, working in hand with like Penn State, to match people and do some apprenticeships. So to that, Secretary Redding is working on some grants that would help beginning farmers be able to purchase these farms. So I think the most important part of this is, how do we match farmers ready to go into the next stage of their life with younger farmers looking to get into the next stage of their lives? Because sometimes there's a disconnect there. Secretary Redding is also very into workforce development. I had a call this week with his director of workforce of, again, how do we match people? Penn State is actually looking to do an apprenticeship in butchery. How do we get people to go into that field? Because food supply has been so highlighted during this pandemic that we need butchers, quite frankly, and how do we get people into that field? So I think this is a great start. I think this bill will be important to free up some of that money to be looking into this, because not that I want to say there was any good thing about this pandemic, but I think it showed how important food supply chain is right now. So I think everyone's working together. Stay tuned. If anyone out there watching this has any ideas, I will tell you this: the Secretary Redding will take any idea and go with it. So I think we're going to get there, but I think everyone needs to work together.
And Carrie, you brought up another point when you said about Penn State offering a class on butchering. Last year at the Pennsylvania State Grange Convention, we had a resolution introduced and passed that they want the Pennsylvania State Grange to work with the National Grange to instrument the word custom butcher shops in the USDA law that would allow the local butcher shop to buy meat from a local farmer, kill it, process it, and sell it out of his store. Because the way the law is written right now, he can do that, but the farmer has to, if he does not want the entire animal and he wants to sell half of it, or he wants to sell a quarter of it, the butcher can do that and process it, but it has to be stamped not for resale, because there's not
That's
a
how
federal.
our meat is.
Right, right. And there's not a federal inspector there when it's killed. And what we would like to see put into effect, that as long as that butcher shop is inspected by a state inspector, he could kill, process, and sell that meat out of his counter. Now, he would not be able to sell it to Giant or to Wise or Tyson Meats or anything like that, but he would be able to sell it within his local community. Now, there again, that's one of those things that, will we get it accomplished? I don't know, but everybody out there listening, it's one of those things that you can help us work toward, because that'll not only help the local butcher shop, it helps the local farmer because it gives them another source for their meat. I know during the pandemic, many of the beef producers and swine producers, they had no place for their meat to go because the big processing plants got hit with COVID. You all heard how Smithfield and some of the other ones ended up having to shut down because of their workers getting sick, and that created a backlog in the food supply. So there again, the Grange, both and at the state and national level, are starting to advocate that we need more local processing. We've learned now from the pandemic what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. And that was never a good practice. It never will be. So, Carrie?
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. So pandemic has highlighted a lot of things, and spotlight is on agriculture right now. So we just really want to take advantage and get some of these initiatives forward. And then I'll kind of go, that's pretty much the bills that are moving right now. But some of our other legislative priorities, do you want me to touch on broadband?
Please.
So broadband, what can we say? At least everybody now is thinking we should probably do something about broadband. How we do that is in question. We at the Grange really want to see a dedicated line item to broadband. Right now, the governor zeroed out broadband. There was a bill by Senator Langerholt last year to give grants to go to underserved and unserved areas to do broadband. The governor's office kind of said that it was not, the language was not written, that it was only written for a 1-year grant. So it appears to be zeroed out in the budget. I think everyone agrees it needs to be funded absolutely wholeheartedly, but how do we do that? The governor has said he would like to see it in the form of RACP grants. And without going too far into the weeds on RACP, a broad overview of it is a redevelopment, revitalization grant. It's a very big program. I don't know how they would particularly fund broadband through that. I mean, I guess it's possible, but we just feel it really should have a dedicated line item. Now with the American Rescue Plan monies coming in, I think there is an opportunity there, and I'm hoping Wayne and I are in the Capitol on Monday so that we can kind of start planting the seed while we're there. To make sure we're getting broadband funded. And this is an issue that goes all across Pennsylvania. I mean, it's in rural areas, it's in urban areas. I think we've all seen on the news children that would walk blocks upon blocks just to be able to get a Wi-Fi signal at the local Starbucks so that they could go to school. So again, I think everyone agrees we need it. But how do we deploy it? And I think we as the Grange want to be at the seat when these discussions are, at the table when these discussions are happening to make sure that this is getting funded properly. And Wayne, I think you could talk all morning about broadband, but I'll let you kind of touch on it as well.
You're 100% right, Carrie. So many people tell me when I start on broadband to get off my soapbox, but it's a soapbox that needs to be stood upon and broadcast. As you heard me say a couple of times today, I think education is the key. And broadband, the pandemic, if nothing else, has highlighted it. Before everybody got on here this morning, I said to both Carrie and Jen, I hope my link stays up, because where I'm at in Prairie County, if it rains, if it snows, or if the wind blows, there's a very good chance I'm going to lose my internet, because it's coming in over a DSL or a data line, and it's just very, very unreliable. And it doesn't only affect the education, it affects businesses in rural Pennsylvania. You've heard me talk about butcher shops. I've testified before committees that my local butcher shop, I went there to buy meat one day, and when I gave the girl my credit card, I just seen kind of all the expression go out of her face. And I said, Ann, what's wrong? And she said, oh, it's nothing with your credit card. We just lost internet, so I can't process your card. And she said, you know, what do I do if somebody from out of the area comes in and wants to buy a couple $100 worth of product? Do I sell it to them and hope that when the internet comes back up, they gave me a good card, or do I lose the sale? She said, either way, I stand a chance to lose. And that really highlighted the importance of it. Whenever I was testifying out in Fayette County before a board of legislators that had held a hearing out there, Farm Bureau right beside me, they gave the example of out in Berks County, and one of their members owns a farm market, and where the market's located, they have no internet, so they have to accumulate everything onto a thumb drive, and when they get back to the farm at night, process all those credit cards, and again, hope that they were all good. So, you know, what other industry would you expect to operate under those kinds of situations? And it just goes on and on. Telemedicine, you know, businesses moving into an area with inadequate broadband. They're going to take one look at it and say, we can't move in there because we can't get orders and we can't process payments. So I'm sorry, but we're going to move into the next county here where we can effectively do business. So rather than me continue to talk about the effects of broadband, which, you know, you've heard me say about farmers with modern farm equipment. You buy a $250,000 machine with GPS and everything on it, but then you can't take that data back to the farm at night or on the weekend and put it into a program that makes it useful. That machine didn't help you. So what I'd like to do at this point, Carrie, is maybe talk a little bit about how we mentioned at the beginning of the program, people being citizen lobbyists, and some of the issues that are really important when you want to be a citizen lobbyist. And I think the first thing I would say to people is, when you go in to talk to a legislator or even a township supervisor or whoever it may be, the first thing you want to do is introduce yourself, tell them why you're there, and the biggest thing is say thank you. And remember that the organization that you represent, the Grange, is nonpartisan. You know, I will guarantee you on Monday, no matter whose office Carrie and I walk into, we will be greeted with open arms, because we are not there to represent the Democrats. We're not there to represent the Republicans. We're not there to represent the independents. We're there to represent the grassroots community that our members belong to. And that is so important, because they want to discuss the issues. So again, introduce yourself, say why you're there to talk, and then say thank you. And then, you know, continue to have a good conversation, give all the highlights of why you think this bill is important or why you think it should be defeated. You know, we don't support everything that's out there. So if you're not in support of that bill or resolution, or something that's coming up before your local supervisors, don't be afraid to say, hey, I really don't think this is a good idea, but then explain to them why you think it's not a good idea. Don't let them walk away saying, oh, okay, Wayne doesn't like that. And then they, well, why doesn't Wayne like it? He never gave me a reason as to why we should vote against it or not vote for it. And then the other thing is, when you end your conversation, don't forget to say thank you again. You know, these people, think of it as a school board member. You know, it's a thankless job. And you say, well, they get paid all this money. Yes, depending on where they're at. If it's local government people, supervisors, no, they get a very, I'd almost refer to it as a stipend, and they're donating their time for the betterment of their community. But even when you get to the state and local legislators, they're trying to represent everybody, and they're never going to please everybody. They know that. They have to try and please the majority and do things that they think, after they're out of office, is still going to have a positive effect or influence on their communities. And are we always going to agree with that? Believe me, not in a long shot. But we try to work for the common good. So Carrie, do you want to add anything to those comments?
Sure. No, I think those are some wonderful tips. I'll just kind of add a few points from my perspective. When we start typically representing an organization, we'll go to our kind of key champions in the House and Senate and say, okay, you know, would like to let you know that we have started representing the Pennsylvania State Grange. What do you know about them? Have they been involved? You know, do they come around? And typically they'll either say, oh yeah, you know, they're great. We really lean on them as a resource to give us some input into bills, or we'll hear this. Well, we only hear from them when they're mad at us or if they need something. You don't want to be in the latter. And I will say, Wayne, you and Vince did an amazing job with that, because when I started this back in January, you really get on Capitol Hill, you really get a seat at the table. And that's what we always say. You want a seat at the table when major policy is being discussed. And that is something that the Grange has done very, very well. So much applause and kudos to that. We always like to say, in being an advocate, advocacy is kind of like a garden. You would never just plant a garden and walk away and not tend it. You wouldn't, you know, you need to weed it. You need to make sure the rocks are out of it. You need to make sure it's having adequate water, fertilizer, etc. Same thing goes with advocacy. Check in with them from time to time. Offer to be a resource. You know these issues. Members on the Hill can not know every issue in and out. They depend on groups like ours to let them know what is good policy and what maybe won't work. And that is not their fault. They can't be experts in everything. So that's when the Grange comes in. We can be a resource. So again, like Wayne said, thank yous always go a long way. I would even say, if you can, maybe just send a thank you note for their time, and just check in with them and ask, you know, is there anything I can do on, you know, House Bill 25? Like, is it moving? Is there anything that we can help you expand upon that? Relationships really matter. And then the last thing I'll just kind of touch on with being an advocate is tell your story. They love stories. I can tell you from my years on the other side of the table, you could get a zillion form emails and they will go to a folder and you'll get a response, but it'll be the same response. But if you either have time to handwrite a letter or personalize a letter of what this means to you and how it could affect your life or other people's lives, I think that goes a very, very long way when it's personalized like that. So just kind of think of those tips. If you're able to, district offices are a great way. I mean, it's always fun to go to the Capitol and meet your legislator there. But a lot of times, if you make an appointment in the district, you get more one-on-one time. It's a more casual environment, and you have more time to really, you know, advocate or advocate against something. So those are kind of a couple thoughts that I would lay out to everybody.
And Carrie, you mentioned another point there about the district offices. I'd like to also emphasize, don't be upset if you don't get to talk to your legislator. Many times talking to a staff person
Yes.
is just as important or more important than
Mhm.
talking to the legislator, because the legislator assigns staff people to do the research and to come back with the facts and the figures to allow them to make a knowledgeable decision on how they're going to vote. So many times talking to the staff people is even more important than talking to the legislator. And I'd like to, Carrie, you've heard Carrie mention several times here about the Pennsylvania either wants to have a seat at the table or we do have a seat at the table, and how important that seat is. In 2019, at our convention in State College, G.T. Thompson was speaker. And I don't think I will ever forget a comment that he made to the delegate body at that convention. He said, when it comes to politics, you either have a seat at the table or you're on the table. And he said, believe me, you want to be a seat at the table. You don't want to be what they're feasting on the table. So I've thought about that many times, and believe me, if we get an opportunity to have a seat at the table, and I'll give you one of those, two of those opportunities. Number one was Dina Zug represented us on the Dairy Future Commission, and Vince Phillips, even though he retires, he is still representing us on the Broadband Commission. That is about a 5-year commission to study and make recommendations to the legislature on getting broadband. In that instance, the Grange is the only organization that has a seat at the table that is not legislative or a member of the telecommunications industry. And I think that speaks volumes of what they think of us and how much they value the Grange's input for us to be on that commission. Carrie?
Yeah, no, that's a true testament to you. And I can tell you firsthand knowledge with the Dairy Futures Commission. I was in the room when Corman's legislative director said, I have this idea. This is what we want to do. And I know that there were a lot of discussions about who would be on that commission. They weren't just letting anybody on that commission. So for the Grange to have a member, that's huge. I mean, it really is a testament to how great Grange has done in advocacy. So the hats off, and which made me slipping into this role so easy, because those relationships were already made. It wasn't, sometimes you have to start from the bottom and really work up to make those relationships, but a lot of those relationships are there. So really, we just want to keep the relationships we have and expand them. One thing that we're kind of excited about, if COVID allows it, which I'm hoping it will, we'd like to get a trip with the Philadelphia delegation to Penn State, to the agricultural buildings, and I think that'll kind of show them firsthand what all Penn State's doing. So we're excited to get moving on that.
And Carrie, thank you for bringing that up, because I'd like to talk just a couple minutes on that. This is something that we came up with at the state level a couple years ago, and we were in the process of getting it put together, and then COVID hit, and it kind of had to be put to the wayside. But again, it goes back to my one word: education. And I would like the Pennsylvania State Grange to be the notch that can take the Philadelphia delegation up to the research and side, the land grant side of Penn State University. Because even I didn't know until I got into the position of president of the Pennsylvania State Grange, that there's actually two sections to Penn State. There's Penn State University, and then there's this Penn State land grant research and extension facility. And it's funded two different ways. The Penn State University Land Grant College has a line item budget in the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture's budget that goes directly to the research and extension part of Penn State. We must fund that to a certain percentage in order to be able to get federal funds. And that all filters down to even your local townships and counties, or I'm sorry, the local counties supply an amount of funding to the land grant university. And as I said in the beginning, I just participated on Thursday in Capitol Day, and one of the legislators that we were talking to, they said, well, if the university is flat funded and they're still existing and haven't really fallen on any hard times, what's the problem with continuing to flat fund them? And I said, because the problem is they can't continue to grow and develop and do the best that they can do with the best equipment available to them. I said, I'll use the medical field as an example. I said, if you need a specialized x-ray and you were going to go to Penn State Hershey to get that x-ray, and you found out that they don't have this new modern machine, so you have to maybe even travel to another state to get it. I said, because of them not being able to buy that new machine, it creates a hardship on you. And I said, Penn State was very instrumental in helping to stop the avian influenza flu, swine flu, or swine fever in the pigs, and they're fighting the spotted lanternfly. So I said, if they can't buy new research equipment that would maybe take a certain study from 6 months down to 6 weeks, we, the residents of Pennsylvania and the surrounding states, pay the price because we didn't give them the ability to perform at the best of their ability and to maintain professors and research analysts that are the best in the country. And that particular representative said, you know, that's the best presentation I've ever heard on why Penn State's budget in the ag department is so important. Because for them, they just thought, well, they're still there, so it must not be a problem. No, they had to understand why every year that they are flat funded is another year in regression, not progression. So, Carrie?
Yep. No, I think that's all, we really have here. I guess I could touch on the federal money. We're still sorting through the federal money, but it's pretty outstanding how much money is coming Pennsylvania's way, just in looking at it. I know of one particular county that is getting 1.5 times what their annual budget is. So how do we use that money? And I would argue, let's be smart about it. Let's not just, line our streets with gold, but if not ag, then who? I think we need to look at it and make our case. There was some money taken from the agricultural budget in the governor's proposal. And I believe that was probably by design, knowing that this money would be coming in so they can kind of backfill it. But I'm being told it's possible that some budget bills could be put into position next week when they are in session. So this is when the discussions need to start taking place. And I can think of many ways that we could use that money effectively. So we will be working to make sure that rural Pennsylvania is represented strongly within that money as they decide how they're going to spend it.
Right, and thank you, Carrie, because that is definitely going to be a subject that we'll be trying to stay on top of
Yes.
over the next couple months. Jen, we'll jump back to you. Did you get any questions, or are there any questions of anybody watching and listening for us to address?
I have not received any questions. I know that we have one person joining us on the Zoom, and I don't know if she might have any questions. It looks like not. Thank you.
Okay.
I just would like to thank Wayne and Carrie very much for this morning. Thank you for giving us such a thorough look at what is happening legislatively within the Grange. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
Yep.
Wayne and Carrie, do you have anything else that you would like to share with us this morning?
I just, again, would like to repeat, we'll get the slide that was shared out to everybody. But I'm here for you. I'm representing all of you. So if there is anything at all that you would like to see discussed, please reach out to me. I'm here for you, and would like to be helpful to you in any way.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Jen. And I'll just reiterate what Carrie said. The Pennsylvania State Grange is here to serve you, and we have put our contact information out there in many different ways. It's on the website. It's in the invitation that Jen sent out for these meetings. It'll be on the links that go out. I know you can call the state office, and if there's no one in the office on the recording, it leaves names and phone numbers of people to call. So please reach out to us. Am I going to sit here and tell you that we will be able to achieve what you would like to see us do every time? No, but I will tell you we will look at it. We will advocate it to the best of our ability, and represent you as members of the Grange. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody watching today, and who might be watching it later from the link on YouTube. I just would like to put a reminder in everybody's mind to please plan on joining us for the next virtual leadership workshop, which will be next Saturday, March 27th at 10:00 a.m. And it will be led by Membership Director Lizzie Bailey. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.